Podcast. I'm Jared, and I'm joined with my co-host Cam. And this is going to be our pilot episode. Full transparency, we've shot a few episodes. Just wanted to make sure our mics were good. The scenery was good, all that. Probably going to make some improvements over time, but just wanted to get a couple under our belt before we shoot the pilot. And what this episode's really going to be about is, one, introducing ourselves, and then two, what we want out of this. You know, what we want this podcast to be all about, the impact we want it to have, kind of the topics we may discuss, the range of topics, I should say. And
we're setting the vision. We're talking about what disciple is, what it means to be a disciple. I mean, take us away. We'll get into it. I know you've got a vision to share.
We'll talk about maybe some background first. So our producer, Mark, and we started a company called Disciple, and our vision was, he's a missionary in Zambia, Africa. His family's been out there, I guess, forever, really. I mean, it goes back generations, and we just wanted to start a company that could support that mission, that, we, right off the bat, we're like 25% of what we make is going directly to that mission back in Africa. And we were like, hey, the thing is that starting a company is great, but we're called Disciple, so we need to be discipling. So while he's in Zambia and he's discipling out there, he's caring for people at a clinic, at a school, we want to be back here just sort of talking about anything and everything that impacts Christians.
Well, I think one of the things as an observer, as you guys started this, that was so inspiring is the idea that we're practicing the way. We're practicing the way of Jesus Christ. And with that, you start a company to support a mission field. And there's lots of ways to do that. And both of you guys are pretty enterprising young men. And you looked at this and said, okay, we want to have a clothing brand that honors God. And that's great, because that's going to support missions in Africa. And, we're having great conversations in our small groups and among our friends about what's going on in culture and what we're reading in the Bible and what's going on, just what we see in our worldview. So you took this and said, look, I think there's a lot of synergy that could be had from having conversations of people that are trying to practice the way. How can we bring those conversations, bring more people in, and share that vision and support kingdom work, whether it's in Zambia or whether it's in America or wherever it may be. But starting with what Mark's doing in Zambia is a great place to start, an amazing way to open the conversation of how do we walk the way with Jesus? How are we truly a disciple, not a Christian, but how are we a disciple of Jesus? Because I think that one of the things that we've talked about on our earlier podcast that the audience doesn't know about yet is that there are Christians in name only, and then there are disciples. Those are followers of Jesus that make everything in their life centered around that truth.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And I think for you and I, we met through our church. Yep. That's been growing, expanding. I think the average age of the congregation is like 30.
Yeah, I know. I'm still old. That's killing me. It hurts
we
a little bit on Sundays.
we have an event called Gather Round that's done like once a month at our church, and it's for the congregation, but it's for young adults, and like hundreds of people come out, and I'm like, I can't go to this anymore.
It's a really sad thing, but I'm no longer a young adult. I'm just an adult.
Right.
But yeah,
exactly.
It's done for you. Your time's gone.
Exactly. But through this church and the community focus that I think the church has, we've been able to build a relationship, and we have a whole bunch of other guys that we built relationships with, and it's given us a lot of different perspective. I mean, the people in our groups, I mean, the struggles are wide ranging. The work that Christ is doing in each one of their lives is wide ranging, and it's amazing to see, and the testimonies and everything else. And then, and this is my experience, is as I go either out of the church or meet people who are just coming into the church, they don't have that. They don't have that community. They don't have that discipleship. They don't have that accountability. And when we say accountability, we're not just talking about, hey man, like, let's try not to do that. Let's work through whatever this is. No, the accountability of, are you praying this week? Are you reading your word?
Smoking, drinking,
right?
sleeping around.
It's not that. Yeah, but a lot of people don't have that, and there's a real need. And we've talked about it on some of the episodes that we've already shot about male loneliness, depression, anxiety, testimonies that we've heard from guys. They're just like, man, I believe in God, but I feel like it's such a lonely walk. And I hear that and I'm like, man, that hasn't been my experience at all.
Well, I also think, there's a million podcasts now, right? One of our friends jokes we're doing the most white male thing ever, two guys starting a podcast in this way.
Yeah.
But I think the takeaway that I see in this space is that these are conversations that need to be had, that people want to have, but they may not have a space to engage in them. And there's a great podcast on apologetics. We talked about apologetics last time. And there's great podcasts when you want to go into just hear a sermon. And at the same time, YouTube's a great place to get extra material. It's a terrible place to go to church. And a podcast is a place where I think we can kind of dip our toes into the idea of let's have the conversations that we're having about what we're learning, what's going on in our lives, our friends' lives, from that lens of being a disciple, because I think that's a space that's lacking. And we're big on community. So we're not saying that disciple is going to be your community, but it can be a place that fosters conversations that communities should be having or are having almost in an echo chamber. And let's introduce more thoughts. Let's introduce more ways to follow Jesus.
Right, exactly. And I think too, we're really going to talk about culture. We're going to take I can't tell you how many times I've watched a video on YouTube and I see a comment that's just, they're talking about something and I'm like, wow, like there's a need here. It has the most likes. Like we need to discuss this. And I think that it really defines our scope, which is our scope is pretty much, if it impacts Christians, we're going to talk about it and we're going to do our very best to look at it the way a disciple should look at it.
We are never going to run out of topics.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So I don't think that we're necessarily going to be preaching a sermon. I think that if you want to go deeper into the context of Scripture, those sorts of things, obviously we'll touch on it. We'll have guests on that'll talk about it. But there's other places for that. There's Mike Winger. There's Bama. There's a lot of other places to go. I think that our scope is really on just kind of walking with our audience through these challenges that we face today.
Yeah, I'm not a pastor. I'm not a preacher. I just want to follow Jesus in a context that I can relate to and have conversations about content that I'm seeing inside and outside the church. How do I consume this and think about this and have conversations about this in a way that is honoring to the way?
Right. And another thing that I would say is we're not holding back. Like if there's somebody who's influencing a lot of people and if they were to speak in church, there's some churches that would be like, get out of here, we're not doing that. Like people are listening to these folks and they're sometimes spot on. They're sometimes not from a biblical perspective. And we're going to bring it in.
Well, we have an episode where we talk a lot about Joe Rogan or Andrew Tate. And it's the idea that sometimes these people might even have a correct diagnosis about something that's wrong in society that's impacting culture. But they don't really have the right remedy. They're not looking at this from a Christ-like lens. And that's where we can step in and say, hey, you want to know what? They're touching on something that is important to culture and is impacting Christianity and is impacting Christians. However, what they're actually prescribing as a solution isn't something that we're going to endorse biblically.
Right, exactly. And something else, I think that, and this is a question that I asked in a Bible study yesterday. I said, how do you think the outside world looks at Christianity? How do you think that somebody who's not a Christian looks at Christianity? And what they're probably going to say is, look, Jesus was great. I get it. People are trying to, do good works and be a good person, or maybe they'll say, hey, it's strict. You have to follow these rules. And it's like, no.
Yeah, it's either there's no God, your God's judgmental and evil, or how can he be all powerful if there's evil in the world, or at the same time he's just a good teacher. Like those are some of the major camps we see people fall into, where it's like Christ is one of many ways to heaven. There is no heaven, there is no God, or I actually think your God is judgmental and or evil are the common places we see people fall that don't know Jesus.
Right. And I think we're really going to, as we discuss things, we understand, hey, look, there is an eternity mindset, right? We're not of this world, right?
And the kingdom of heaven is at hand. It's now. Yeah.
I mean, it could be tomorrow, right? Like we don't know what's going to happen an hour from now. We don't. But we are here, and we are here to glorify God. And so part of that is navigating the circumstances that we're in. And obviously we're two guys, so we're going to speak a lot from the male perspective. Hopefully there'll be a female disciple podcast coming soon. But, I think, back to what I was talking about, that idea of Christianity being works-based and all those things, it's so counter to the gospel. It's not about works. The most righteous person in the world and the least righteous person in the world both need Christ. And, this is a podcast where, anybody can listen in. This is not, we're gospel focused. We're going to talk about topics. And if we talk about something and it's offensive or something like that, it's not personal against maybe your beliefs or your doctrine or anything, but we are gospel focused and we're going to stick to the word of God throughout as best we can, right? I mean, we're not theologians, but also
to go into the space of wanting to deepen our theology and ask those questions ourselves. Mm-hmm. I loved our apologetics podcast in the sense that the theme of this is, don't take the Mormon route of doubt your doubts. Let's go deeper, let's explore, let's seek. And I think that's really great about this platform so far is not this idea that we're going to shove something down your throat. If we don't know something, we don't know something. And we're going to question and seek as well and find resources and find answers, but nothing is off the table in any direction. Let's find truth.
Yeah. I mean, look, it's inevitable and this isn't a political podcast, but politics is very much part of our culture. And so, for example, politics, if we're talking about something political, look, we don't necessarily know the answers. I've gone back and forth so much between a Quaker versus abolitionist mindset. It's I don't know, right? But I'm open to talking about it, right? And I think that's kind of where we're coming from, is that we will talk about anything. If you have any questions, any topics that you want us to talk about, we're open to it all.
Yeah, send them in.
Yeah. So with that, I think we've defined our scope, which is extremely wide and broad.
I would say it's a podcast with the focus of being a disciple and follower of Jesus Christ in today's current culture and discussing things that matter inside and outside the church and how Christians should think about, have conversations, and really proceed in a way that makes Christ the focus even in today's modern culture.
Yep, that's really good. So if you like that video, you can watch another one right here. And if you want to see the full podcast, you can click right here. And as always, 25% of all proceeds go to missions, and you can always check us out, disciples.us.